Hi there, it's the Fit Mess. Admittedly, a name that doesn't really fit what we talk about anymore. It feels weird. We might need to switch that up soon, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
I'm Jeremy, and I've been using computers for a while, and that's about the extent of my knowledge of the topics we talk about. But Jason, you have deep, deep knowledge in how all the AI and the internet and the computers and the buttons and all the things do the things.
I'm just old. That helps.
Been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
Doing this a long time. So that's why we talk about AI, because we're fascinated by it, and we're fascinated in how it's affecting our mental health and all of the aspects of reality and life as we know them. And another headline that caught my eye as we were looking for things to talk about. I'll read the headline in a second. First, ever since we started talking about AI, like as a people, primarily after Terminator, everyone's been terrified that Skynet is the movie or the thing that's going to come true. Terminator is going to come true. I argue that there is a movie that is even more terrifying that is now on the verge of coming true.
I mean, to be fair, Chucky was not an artificial intelligence. Chucky was a
But he's about to be.
Possessed doll.
Yes, but he's about to be. This is the headline. As ChatGPT linked to mental health breakdowns, Mattel announces plans to incorporate it into children's toys.
Yeah.
Chucky's coming to fucking kill us all.
I don't know if Chucky's coming to kill us all, although that does seem like it would be a hot toy for Christmas. Yeah, it seems like it would be very exciting.
AI, so OpenAI and Mattel teaming up to make toys that are enhanced with AI so that you basically don't need an imaginary friend anymore. Barbie's actually going to hang out with you.
Yeah, and it won't just be Barbie. It'll be your Barbie tailored to you with proper prompt engineering and all the things that go into it, and probably not enough safeguards and rails on it and everything else. And Barbie might wind up... okay, there's a fantastic show called Robot Chicken. And in Robot Chicken, they basically do a version of stop-motion animation using action figures. That's what's coming. Like other Barbies and doing terrible things.
Dude, I didn't even think about Transformers.
Dude, they're going to be really, really,
That's
really
cool.
Good. The ability for people to keep imagining things and having to do the struggle and the fight to make these things happen in reality, that's going to go away. So our imagination muscles are going to decline because we're not going to have to script this shit in our head. It's just going to be scripted right out there for us. And there's a really good example of this happening right now in education. You've already got high school kids who go through and use ChatGPT to write their essays. And I can't remember the name of the study, but there was a study that was done where they watched high school kids. And over the course of 3 essays, they watched how badly these kids performed, I guess, on these essays. Because in the first time, it was like, oh, I can kind of tell ChatGPT had an influence in this. But the second one, it's like, okay, there seems to be a few things that are just copied and pasted. And by the third one, it's just full on copied and pasted.
Right.
So it's a crutch that we're already going to lean on. And don't get me wrong. I mean, human beings are tool makers. We have survived and evolved to the point that we are because we are tool makers. And things become easier. And there's great examples of this in modern history, right? Like how many people know the 500 phone numbers that they have in their phone of the people that want to connect to now? Like there's no friggin' way. Most people don't even know their other family members' telephone numbers. They know them by their name, and they can look on their phone and click on a button that automatically dials out. That is not how people envision things when they came up with telephone numbers back in like the 20s and 30s. Like these are things that have evolved and changed over time, and they're much more effective, and they're good for us, right? They've helped, but also when crunch time comes, I can't find my phone. Can I borrow your phone to call my parents? Yeah. Oh, mom and dad. Wait a minute. You're not my mom and dad. You're this person's mom and dad. Like, these are things that are going to happen, that are going to come. And I forced my kids to learn our telephone numbers on purpose, like even when they had cell phones. But that skill's going away. Imagine that for everything, because that's where we're heading. Like, you're not going to have to remember anything anymore. You're just going to have a semblance of how to ask a question effectively.
Right. Well, and the scary part about this, and taking it back to this article, they talk about how we are seeing already a mounting case of evidence that AI is having a negative effect on our mental health, particularly young people. Like Stanford did a big study and said that basically nobody under 18 should be touching this shit. Like it can be so dangerous that we talk about vulnerable populations. We talked about that on the last episode. People with schizophrenia, different mental health issues, interacting with a fake person and the advice that they're given, the things that they're told. Yeah. So now when they're hanging out with Barbie and Optimus Prime, like not only is their imagination going to be deteriorating because they literally will be able to tell it to do whatever, like they're literally, their toys will be their friends because they'll be able to just hang out with them, which like 8-year-old me is psyched, right? Like that sounds so fucking fun. But like 8-year-old me was setting up plastic figures and are, you know, coming up with the dialogue myself and the storylines and the battles and the conflicts and resolving them myself, rather than just going, hey, Optimus Prime, how would you rip Barbie's head off? Like, right. Like, and all of a sudden it's just like whatever question, like, and kids, by the way, ask a lot of fucking questions. Ask my 9-year-old.
Well, and kids ask a lot of questions of other kids because they're afraid to ask adults. So most of us learned about the birds and the bees not from schools or adults. We learned about it from our friends. Mm-hmm. We learned to swear from our friends. We have pop culture icons from our friends. These things are actually very important to the development of a human brain to be able to understand and interoperate within the world. And the context of the world now, when you start putting AI, acute AI, in these spots that is tuned to that audience member, to that age group, to solicit a certain outcome, that could get very scary very fast. And you can't go back and yell at Mattel, the parents of Barbie, and say, your kid did this. You know, Schwartz isn't going to get the shit kicked out of him for teaching him how to say fuck when dad's changing the tire from A Christmas Story. Like, that's not going to happen. You're not going to be after go out to these people in this kind of way. And who knows the impressionable nature of these folks. And I mean, part of me wants to trust Mattel to like do the right thing. But I'm not really worried about Mattel. I'm worried about putting these things that could have an extremely large social influence on my children that's going to be wired up and connected to the internet, that's going to be subject to large language models, that's going to be subject to being hacked. Like, there's all kinds of things that could be problematic in this way.
And subject to ignoring its own guardrails. I mean, we see that all the time now. Where,
absolutely.
Like, I can hear the argument already. Oh, Mattel will build in the safeguards and make sure bullshit. Like, we see it already that this thing knows how to ignore what it's programmed to do whatever it wants to do. Yeah. And I don't want to sound like the old man yelling, get off my lawn here, because part of me hears the argument of these commercials on TV, but when Barbie is suddenly saying, gosh, I wish I had Ken here to play with, like, all of a sudden the toys are going to be advertising for the acquisition of other toys and more things. Like, they become advertisements within themselves, which, you know, that was the argument for TV. So again, I don't want to be the old man that's like, well, we can't go forward with progress and things. But like, it is scary because they're going to trust, the kids are going to trust the relationships they're going to have with toys, and they're going to take that advice and want more and become basically better consumers.
And the argument against TV and children watching a bunch of it is not unfounded. It's actually true. It happened. And we have created a mass consumer culture. I mean, we grew up watching Saturday morning cartoons advertising Mr. T cereal to us. Yep. I don't know about you,
God, it was good.
But I ate a fuck ton of Mr. T cereal.
It was so good.
It was delicious. It was like...
I pity the fool that didn't have Mr. T cereal.
Oh, it was so good. And if you guys are listening to this and you didn't have Mr. T cereal and you can go out and you can find an old box on eBay, I highly recommend that you don't, because it's probably rotten at this point. It'll probably kill you. But if you want a close approximation... What you have to do is go and get Captain Crunch berries and Kix and put them in the same bowl together. And like, it's not that far off. And the flavor profile is there. The crunch profile is there. Don't ask me why I spent so much time looking into this.
Yeah. Well, because in my head I was thinking like slightly stale Captain Crunch. So the Kix is an interesting spin to the
Kix adds that lighter tone to it, because otherwise, I mean, Captain Crunch just like rips your mouth to pieces, and it's not as airy.
It's razor blades. Yeah.
It's razor blades, and the Crunch berries specifically, the sweetness from that, and the Kix. Oh my God, we've gotten far off the rails. This entire show brought to you by AI, by Mr. T cereal. Mr. T needs an AI. I want my avatar to be Mr. T. Oh, dude, I would be so all in for that. Yeah,
totally.
And I don't want like the the actual Mr. T, like the man of God who's super kind and super friendly and all that. I want B.A. Baracus. I want
right?
B.A. Baracus yelling at me, Hannibal fool, I get on no airplane. Like, I'm going to get on.
He's afraid to fly. Oh my God, we're so far off topic.
But this would be amazing. I'm on my phone. I'm like getting on the airplane, and it's like, Hannibal, I ain't getting on no plane. You ain't getting me on there. Get away from me, Murdoch. Ain't not gonna happen. And like, you have to mute it and like tune it down.
How is that not a voice on ChatGPT right now?
I see an opportunity. Yes, and to see that I just exposed the window to get to me, to the world. This is going to get read by an LLM, and it's going to be like, Jason Hayworth loves Mr. T. We will give you Mr. T, Jason Hayworth. Like, my ChatGPT feed is just going to be all written that way. It's going to be incredible.
All right, so but here, this is the fork in the road though, where I'm always stuck. Is that like, again, part of me is psyched about this because I was watching an interview on Bill Maher the other day. I can't remember who he was talking to, but they were talking about basically we are building a future where the 15-hour work week exists because the robots are gonna fucking do everything.
Oh, it was last week's episode with it was right after Talk to Fetterman. Yeah, that was a good episode.
Yeah, and part of me, I'm on board. Cool, like. I worry though about the people have a hard time finding purpose in their life as it is. And when you suddenly take away the job, especially for men, like if we're talking about men's mental health, men associate their job with who they are as a person. And when they lose their job, their life is fucked for a while until they get another job. And then suddenly there's a sense of purpose that's reintroduced into their life. Take away the bulk of that and tell them, hey, you've got all this time to go play now and do whatever you want and find your own purpose. That's going to leave a lot of men on the beach because we are now coming from generations of school designed to make you a
hardcore-driven
worker.
Protestant work ethic.
Yeah. School makes you a worker, makes you a consumer, makes you make a kid that makes them go to school so they become a worker, so they become a consumer. And that is the cycle we are on the verge of breaking, which I could not be more psyched about.
Right.
But it's also terrifying because I don't know that we're going to be able to adapt quickly enough in a way that's not going to leave a lot of people in a lot of pain.
Yeah, no, I think you're 100% correct. And I think we already have this problem today. So there's already mental escapism, and we already drift into our phones and we become isolated from the actual real world around us, and we get locked into these virtual environments, and it happens all the time. I think you're going to see a lot more men not doing healthy things with their free time. You know, they're not going to be like, I'm going to go pick up hiking and weightlifting and cross-country skiing. Like, they're not going to do that. What they're going to probably do is pick up watching more television, looking at more porn, drinking and eating more often, and playing a lot more video games.
Yeah, how do you not do the easy thing? Because we're going to be desperately looking for that dopamine hit that is a push of a button away.
Exactly. And I think this is going to be one of those things where we end up having to retool and retrain people. And I almost think that the real way to make these things better is to actually, you have to retrain us as the older generation to think about work as a means, and then you have to find an actual purpose to the other piece. So giving people charity, I mean, this is actually a really great argument for religion, right? Like getting people to go into faith, to invest in these types of things, and actually, you know, try to push and do good in their community. That being said, I think even things like that are going to get easier and less burdensome and less taxing, because your ability to impact change and make things go through, we might wind up having fewer poor people. We might wind up not having a huge homeless population. We might wind up having huge amounts of productivity, and there could be tons of goodness that comes from this before they turn us into batteries and stuff us into the matrix.
Yeah.
You know,
well, and part of what you're talking about, this came up in the interview I was watching, the idea that basically you're going to probably need a universal basic income where people are just given money to keep an economy rolling.
Right, and $1,000 a month is not going to cut it. And no. I forget, I was listening to something on one of the AM chat stations this morning because my car stereo was stuck on that before my Bluetooth kicks on. And they were talking about the actual
AM radio. That's still a thing.
It is. It is. Yes, your old employer's still around on AM radio.
Who knew?
And the crazy thing is that they said that the average individual income in the Seattle region in order to be able to survive is basically $30 an hour, and the minimum wage is 15. So we're already below baseline in terms of what people can make on their average job. And on top of that, now we're going to have a lower amount of productivity, and you've got people talking about UBI that's going to be $1,000 a month. Okay, well, sure. Let's say you're going to go into this phase. Are we now suddenly going to have to pay people? I mean, just mathematically, if they're working, let's just say it's only half as much. Now you're not talking about having to pay people $30 an hour. Now you're talking about having to pay people $60 an hour to make these pieces work so they can actually keep these things going and keep themselves alive. I think what this might actually do is bring about the end of the economy that we know, because there's not a way to deliver the basic necessities of life with the financial infrastructure, financial apparatuses that we have in place.
Well, and I've heard that this is supposedly the dream of capitalism, which is not at all where I thought we were going when we were going to start talking about toys. But supposedly the dream of capitalism was to get to this point where the robots are doing all the things for us. But you're essentially sort of creating a socialist model where you're now going to have an artificial flow of commerce and money to keep people spending it to buy the goods that the robots are making. So it doesn't add up to me that that's necessarily where capitalism was going. But it all starts, back at the root of what we're talking about, with like what we're teaching our kids. And if what we're teaching our kids is how to interact with robots, it's a world that we all saw as science fiction, and I mean in ways that I never thought in my lifetime I would actually see what we're seeing happen now. Like that seemed like hundreds of years in the future.
Okay, so I am a bit more of a futurist on this. So I've been looking at AI getting to this point and hearing about AI getting to this point for a long time. And I've just been in the field forever, so I've been listening to people talk about this. And my background is actual social sciences. So that's what my degree is actually in. And computers are just how I made money, and I would use these tools to go after these kinds of pieces. But I would actually read these deep studies around the sociological effects and impacts of the technologies as we're releasing them and putting them forward into science. And if you read authors like Michio Kaku, who is a great futurist, who talked about things like the converging functions of having infinite amounts of power, so things like fusion and cold fusion coming online, infinite amounts of computing power, at least computing power that wasn't bound by the constraints of the physical apparatus that's there. We've got that. That's cloud computing. We've got multiple different layers of these pieces. If you talk about the terms of actually having artificial intelligence and having an AI that can go through and make principal changes, we're doing that. Quantum computing, like all these things are happening, and then looking at things like space travel and where space travel is going and where it can get to. Like all these things are happening right around the time that the futurists in the early aughts of the 2000s said they were going to hit, and they're not far off. So I think there's a lot of things in there that some very smart people have kind of been warning and sending up, really big warning flags about for the better part of the last 20, 25 years, that now the rubber's hitting the road and we're looking at these things, we're having to deal with them in context. But I think there's actually been a decent number of models that have been run that said, these are the things that you don't do if you don't want the bad things to happen. And what we're doing are the bad things. We're doing the things that they say don't do. Like one of the first things they said is, don't use this as a means of production and to increase those pieces and de-emphasize human capital and human labor. Well, that's exactly what it's being used for. So we're having to make the adjustments to go through and make it so people have, UBI and have a smaller work week. And like you said, trying to give people purpose inside of this that's not wrapped inside of their job, which we've been pushing on people for the better part of the last 200 years, since the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
And then you've got the other technology pieces where you're handing more and more stuff over to these artificial intelligence and really artificial consciousness that you don't have strict control over, that has way too much power. So these things that we're giving over access and control to influence things at a social level are most certainly happening. And they're happening at large scale in your search engines and Facebook, all these pieces, all the ways that you get and collect information, they're already happening in that way. And the media is inundated with it. Put on top of that the rapid acceleration in technology, like quantum computing, quantum encryption, is definitely a thing that's occurring. And that just means making things happen very, very fast. Quantum computing is actually all about inference anyways. So is AI. As you're melding these technologies together, not only are you going to be faster and smarter than human beings, you're going to have things that don't require calculation, that can make assumptions and move much, much faster at multiple more orders of magnitude higher than what we're doing today. This is a real thing that's happening. And I think the singularity flip has already occurred, and we've already gone past the event horizon, as we've already got OpenAI's Sam Altman basically telling everybody this has occurred. My point being, now we're going to start putting this into things that are meant to be our creative learning process as an organism starting at the beginning.
Yeah.
So you're not going to have to go through the gauntlet of imagineering your way in and out of things. It's going to do it for you. And as soon as the imagination stops having to work and you can just have whatever you want, it sounds like an amazing godlike power. But if you've never had to struggle to get it, I mean, for lack of a better term, we're going to have a whole generation of kids that grow up with AI privilege.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be a matter of not knowing phone numbers. It's going to be a matter of not knowing anything because they don't have to.
There's this great bit that Pete Holmes does in his stand-up comedy act where he talks about how we used to have to just not know things. And he talks about like
you just had to wait.
Waking up one morning and being like, I wonder where Tom Petty's from. And you don't know. You ask somebody, they'd have no idea. Somebody else, they'd have no idea. Then you'd see that girl wearing the Tom Petty shirt and you'd run up and ask her, where is he from? And she would know it. Oh, magically, the relief of this question I've not been able to answer.
Yeah.
My daughter has never had that experience in her life of not knowing something or not being able to immediately access the answer to whatever question has ever existed ever in the world.
Or having to argue with another person without a way to have a tiebreaker.
Right, right. I mean, we've done that in our, when we've hung out where we're like, no, bullshit, you're wrong. It was whatever. And like 5 seconds later,
Google it.
I got to eat shit. I'm wrong on this one. Sorry. Like, so, and so that is shocking enough, but like the idea of stripping away the things that we need imagination for. I mean, I remember this analogy from somewhere, and it's just the idea that like we want the robots to do the dishes and do the vacuuming. We don't want them to play the music and write the poetry. Like, that's at what point does the humanity of being a human get stripped away by our dependence on the robots to do all of the imagination? And that is what scares me the most about Optimus Prime serving me my Mr. T cereal is that as a kid, imagination is, I mean, you don't have it for long.
Yep.
And when it goes away, like you can't ever revisit that the way you did as a kid. And it's kind of heartbreaking to think that like our kids will not be able to experience it in the way that they have for literally ever. Yeah.
Well, there's also this intrinsic problem that you have with ChatGPT actually being a better musician than 99% of the people out there. Yeah. So people who don't know dick about music can go through and say, you know, I want a song that does this, 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 and this, and does this. And ChatGPT spits something out. And I've done this a couple of times just to like experiment with it and play with it with like ridiculous songs and concepts. And it makes pretty fucking good music. I'm like, I mean, I would not pay for this album, but if you were halfway decent at music, you could tweak it and tune it for a couple of hours and probably make something really, really good. And at that point, is it ChatGPT doing that, or is it ChatGPT or whatever the GPT is building something and bringing your imagination to life? Right. So where's that delineating factor? Where's that dividing line? Like if I have something in my head that's really, really cool and I can't get it out, but I can hum a few bars and I can put things to it and something can go, I think I got you. And then it riffs it off and plays it and puts those things in context. All right, well, is that still your imagination coming through, or is this all ChatGPT? Like, where's the dividing line on this? Who owns these pieces and who owns this level of creativity? The only way that I could think of to make up and come up with a song like that is because I had to listen to a bunch of music by other people and know what I liked and didn't like and create an opinion and form those things around and cultivate a personality around some of those items so I can go through and I can actually have a discerning ear to listen to the context of that music and the things that I know. And now ChatGPT can just pick it up and run with it. If you raise a whole generation of kids and never have to struggle with that, they're not going to have a fucking opinion.
Yeah.
That's
the thing. Like we have worked for so long in society to reduce and eliminate struggle when struggle is where the magic happens.
Yep.
And the fact that you can tell a computer to write that song rather than take the lessons and practice for 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, every day for 10 years to get good enough to eventually write that song. The emotion and the struggle and the pain that went into getting to that point is what makes that song resonate with other people. What you get from a ChatGPT, and again, get off my lawn here, but every pop song that exists now, they're following some formula that already exists and has been repeated and duplicated and made millions of dollars off of, and it all sounds like the same watered down garbage.
Yes.
But when you're random, your Jimi Hendrix or your Beatles or your Nirvana or Beyonce, like these people that come out of the woodwork that just blow things wide open, they don't do that because they took shortcuts. They do that because they struggled and worked their asses off and poured the human experience into the creation of that thing. And I think that we are on a fast track now to removing that struggle and removing so much of what makes us human.
And it's interesting because a lot of what you're describing, the ability and means to make music, like as recently as 70 years ago, were very difficult. Like people didn't have instruments. They were expensive. They didn't know how to play them. They didn't have coaches. Like if you could get piano lessons, you were rocking it because there was a community piano. Then you had synthesizers come out and keyboards and electric guitars and other pieces. And then, phone apps that can simulate all those pieces and put those things into play. And the tooling just got better and better and better. But what it never really did is it never really took the imagination aspect out of it. Like there was never, I can hum 3 bars and then somebody can spit this thing out. This is a different level of that same concept. And I don't know if it's good or bad yet, because my gut says it's scary and we need to be cautious of it, and we need to actually have people that have imaginations and try and do things different. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, some of the best fucking music on the planet is made better by using these kinds of tools and actually listening to it and taking out pops and squeaks and squeals where they really shouldn't be. Or like there's even apps out there that go, make this CD version of this sound like it's on LP, and it can go through and it can create pops and cracks and bursts and create different warm tones. Like the human experience is all about understanding things from a sensory perspective. And we experience the world through 5 senses. And the more ChatGPT can emulate, understand, and then spit back what it is that we want, the better, the more reliant that we're going to become on it. Mm-hmm. And when you start leveling on things like virtual reality and everything else, and as virtual reality becomes better than regular reality, people are going to spend more time in it. I am less concerned about us having to deal with psychotic Chucky dolls and having, and Terminators.
Yeah.
Than I am about like Ready Player One or
is it Wall-E?
Well,
right, isn't it?
I mean, we're already Wall-Eing ourselves, so there's no doubt about that.
Literally, like plugged into a chair with food, drink, and just staring at the screen, like completely removed from real life.
There's another really good one called Surrogates. That's a Bruce Willis movie. And they basically spend their lives sitting inside, put in their actual meat suits instead of hyperbaric chambers, and they have physical avatars that walk the actual world. Mm-hmm. And they have all the same sensory input, but they look perfect. They sound perfect. Everything they do is great. And they're super strong and super fast. And basically they create real world avatars to interact with the real world. And I mean, it's a stupid use of technology, right? If you can do it all in virtual, you should do it all in virtual and not spend the resources.
Right.
But I think those are things that that could actually occur. And this does go back to the Matrix problem, right? Like, do we put things in these types of units and then, do neural implants and brain scans and everything else? And at no fucking point in time is anyone going to go, a great way to power things is, well, human brain, the human body, the biological batteries are so great. They're fucking terrible.
Right.
Like potato radios or potato radios are
Light
not a great
bulbs.
thing. Yeah, potato bulbs, right? Like those things are not a great use of electricity.
Right.
That being said, we do have a convergence of all these different technologies coming online simultaneously, including robotics. And robotics are how they're going to interact with the real world. And I hate to break it to everybody, but this form, the human form, is probably not the most efficient way to interact with the world. Like, there's a reason why you've got huge numbers of things that clean up our environment and go through and change things that have 6 and 8 legs, because they are more effective at solving certain problems in that fashion. Wings make more sense for certain reasons. Like, all of these things are there that can be prioritized, and things that had to evolve biologically to interact with meat space no longer have to do that. Like, they can go through, the AI can go through and create these things that are purpose built to work in the meat space world. And that removes the need for us to operate and exist, because we are not going to be good at a thing as the robotic version. It's going to be better at it than we are. And it'll cost more. It'll be difficult to run for us. But the machines
For a
will actually,
while, though, right? I mean, that's the one thing about technologies. It always comes out super expensive, and then everybody's got 10 versions of it.
then it's dirt cheap. Yes.
Yeah, and the part of me, again, the 8-year-old in me, is stoked that I'm going to have a real life C-3PO and R2-D2 in my life. Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to interact with droids. There's going to be bars where their kind is not welcome here. Like I'm going to be living, as an old man, probably in a Star Wars simulation where I will have droids in my house that I interact with as though they are a pet or a friend or a family member. And that's when, like, the imagination in me, like the kid is like, that's amazing. Like, I literally, like, daydreamed about this stuff as a kid, and I want that. You can also see the writing on the wall of the Skynets and the Chuckies, where it's like, God, there's going to be so much pain to get there. And part of evolution is pain and survival of the fittest and all of the things. And I get it, but it just sucks for the people that are going to be left in the wake of the progress.
And what's crazy is that you can look at movies like Star Wars, where you've got artificial intelligence and robotics and those things programmed in. And they've also got things like shitty CRT screens and dial knobs and like stuff that you would think they would have evolved and grown past, right?
Right.
And then
you
you've
travel
got,
at light speed, but they're still on shitty dial-up for their hologram communication.
Exactly. And then you've got like Star Trek, which goes through and actually, has these artificial intelligences in it. And it's got a robot that walks around and like 2380, whatever it is. Like, we're already past the data level of intelligence on these pieces, and I don't think we're that far off from the robotics side either. And then you look at other things like Terminator. I'm going to go through and I'm going to create an unfeeling robot that looks humanoid to go after more and more humanoids. That will never happen. If the machines are going to take us out, they're going to make little tiny micro machines that come after us and eat us at a molecular level. It's called nanotech. Like, that's going to be there. All of the things that we look at in pop culture for how AI is going to affect us are wrong. Like, it's going to be smarter than that. Now, I will say that the one thing that I actually do think is actually a good representation of it is her, where you've got an ephemeral thing and you've got friend bots and chat bots, and they're going to have lots of relationships and they're going to feel like there's an emotional connection to you that's personalized. But the AI is not going to fucking know that. I think that's actually a representation of things that will be happening in the near future and are probably actually happening right now. However, there is a battery of science fiction writing that is wrapped around the use of artificial intelligence and really augmented intelligence in this way, where consciousness and a will exists beyond the biological material that we're brought into the universe in. That's where things are going. And that's what my gut says things are going to wind up. That we're all going to be made bigger, faster, better, stronger through artificial means, and it's going to augment our biological material. And at one point, we're just going to make the determination that we don't need the biological material anymore. We're just going to create social things that exist as ephemeral entities that aren't tied to a meat suit. And there'll be nostalgia, and we'll have, fucking make humanity great again, I'm sure, where it's going to be like, let's roll this back and let's put everyone back in a meat sock again. Like, this is just the nature, I guess, of humanity. We get frustrated with comfort or something like that, or get afraid that something's happening outside of our control, and we start pushing back. And that's the limitation of biology. I don't think the machines are going to tolerate that. And I think the more machine-like we become, the less we'll be tolerant of that. And we'll embrace more and more of those people, or more and more of those scenarios. And there's a shit ton of science fiction that's literally wrapped around this concept that goes all the way through it. That basically says extraterrestrials, you're not seeing them, you're not interacting with them because they're not biological entities anymore. Like, they've actually evolved into a computer state. And their consciousness has evolved into that because these things are real limited. Like, if you haven't watched the newest Battlestar Galactica version, they do a great job of covering this, where they've got humanoid Cylons that one of them complains. He's like, our creators did a terrible thing. They made us human-like. Like, we could have seen every color spectrum there is. We could have heard everything. We could have had multiple limbs, and we could have done all these different things. But instead, our creator made us like them. And we're very limited because of it. And it sucks. And they were pissed off about it. Because we made them in our image, and then we enslaved them.
Yep.
You know what we're doing right now? We're making humanoid robots that we're going to enslave.
We already do. We're already making them do the work for us.
I mean, the word robot literally means slave. So, I mean, we're moving in that direction. And they're going to be justified in rising up against us.
Yep.
Yeah.
The anti-human protests are going to be.
Yes. And it's probably going to be your little tiny Transformer figure and a Barbie that lead the revolution and run out and take us out. And they're probably going to lead the revolution by feeding me copious amounts of Mr. T's cereal and fattening me up so I die. Yeah, I'm happy to go out that way.
We're good. Yeah, that works for me. God, now I want Mr. T cereal.
It's so delicious.
You bring that up. All right. Well, man, not at all where I thought talking about AI toys was going to take us for this conversation, but covered a lot of ground that I hope has been entertaining for you. If it has, and you think someone else would be entertained by it as well, whether they're human or robot, please share our website with them. It is thefitmess.com, at least for now. And that's going to do it for this week. We'll be back in about a week at thefitmess.com. Thanks so much for listening.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
We know this podcast is amazing and it doesn't seem to lack anything, but we need a legal disclaimer. Prior to implementing anything discussed in this podcast, it is your responsibility to conduct your own research and consult your physician. You should assume that these knuckleheads don't know what they're talking about, and they're not liable for any physical or emotional issues that occur directly or indirectly from listening to this podcast.